Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second live Q&A, and we are changing the time around to try and suit our global audience. So wherever you are watching in the world, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and a huge thank you to all of you who have emailed me your questions. So we have some fabulous questions for our guests today. And we only have one more live Q&A coming up on Saturday at 4 o'clock, and I will be promoting that today. So that will be our last one, specifically related to the summit. But of course, this group is going to stay a great community. So thank you to all of you who've been using it and posting questions and posting your pics of what you're doing. It's fantastic. So please keep, making it a community that is going to help you on your journey. So hi everyone, thank you for coming along. So I'm going to bring in these lovely ladies now, and you will know all their lovely faces. So here we go. Hi Amber and Jessica.
Hi.
And Valerie and Helen. Hi Valerie, you're on mute, darling. We can't hear you. Can you unmute your... There we go. Perfect. So welcome everyone. And we're going to start with each of you just sharing what your specific highlights, your personal highlights were of the summit. So Amber, would you like to start?
The highlights?
Yeah.
I thought it was a wonderful, well done summit, and I think you did an amazing job. There's really not one highlight I can actually say. I haven't got a chance to go through every single one, but I've gone through 2 days of it, and it was amazing. These women in our community and what they bring is amazing. I mean, there's not one that just really stands out to me, but the whole idea of this summit I thought was incredible, and I think it is being received very well.
Yeah,
or at least I've
awesome.
had a lot of good feedback.
That's great. That's great to hear. Yep, so have I. Thanks, Amber. What about you, Jess?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the best thing is, because it's still happening, is the community that was sort of built around this conference. Maybe because it was like the first sort of women's conference of this sort of style. People were really excited, really enthusiastic. I got lots of private messages and people reaching out to each other. And I think that's really nice. And I think the presenters and the audience were sort of all on the same level, like a team, which I really liked. So yeah, good job, Tracy.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jess. And Valerie, lovely to see you for the first time. We didn't manage to get a live Q&A before the summit, but welcome and lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Same here.
And what would be your highlight from the summit?
I think the highlight is just the ability, the fact that you were able to present so many people, reinforcing that there are alternative ways to use nutrition to combat so many health struggles that not only women, but men, women, and their children have, and using low carbohydrate to combat so many health struggles that people don't realize it will even help. Or there's so many myths and so much misinformation, especially like even in my profession as a dietitian. It's overwhelming. So the information is overwhelming. The controversy is overwhelming. The myths are overwhelming. So the fact that you were able to present so many people, there's so much strength in numbers and hearing our stories, why we're doing it, how things work. Thumbs up to be able to give people another option and reinforce that, they're not alone. There are other ways to handle your struggles.
Yeah, awesome. Great. Thanks, Valerie. And welcome, Helen. What about you for your highlights?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that all the other speakers have said. I'm too working my way gradually through the content. There is so much depth and so much richness there. I mean, and things that I'm sure that people who've been following the summit would want to listen to again. I mean, I know certainly when I've taken part in these sorts of events before, that if you're trying to listen to everything over 3 days, there's so much that you need to absorb. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And so I think having the opportunity through purchasing the content to then watch it out more slowly over a longer period of time and go back to things is really, really valuable. I mean, just to mention one of the presenters, I was listening this morning to Michelle Dowker, I think it is, who was talking about endometriosis and autoimmune disease, which are massive issues for women in particular. And just the quality of the content was fantastic, and lots of depth and detail, and it's great to have those sorts of resources to go back to, because I'm sure so many people can benefit from that sort of content.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, everyone, the replay will be available to purchase for years to come. So if you haven't purchased it and you think you want to go back and have a little look, you can certainly do that through one of the millions of links I'll probably post it. All right, now, as I said, thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. I tend to get a lot of these via email, which is fantastic. So we will answer those first, and if any more questions come up through people watching live, we'll get to those if we have time. So the first question was for our dietitians, Jessica and Valerie. Jessica, I'll ask you first. Someone wanted to know, what is your day on a plate, and should we worry about portion sizes?
Oh my gosh, I love this question. Okay, so my day on a plate, I don't even know if I want to say no, my day on a plate, it's great. So I always start with a coffee. I've got evidence right here. Actually, my partner's also a dietitian. We're experimenting for the last 2 weeks. We're doing something a little bit different. So we're trialing dairy-free, which is completely unusual for us because dairy is usually a big part of our diet. So our diet at the moment is a little bit different. So my coffee was an almond latte. And then usually for lunch, it's salmon or some type of eggs or something like that with mayonnaise. Mayonnaise made from olive oil, and I think olive oil is the main one in it. It's the good fat mayo. It's so good if you're looking at mayo. Yeah, you know the one.
I know the one.
Yeah. And then I usually have another coffee because I love coffee. And then for dinner, because I usually do 2 meals a day, sometimes more, sometimes less, just whatever I feel like. I don't have like a strict regime there. And then for dinner, it's usually some slow cooked meat because I've gotten the slow cooker out recently and I'm loving it. So slow cooked meat with some bone broth, and then a little bit of something sweet after dinner. So at the moment, we found this really good coconut oil chocolate that we love. And so we're just having a little bit of that after dinner. Yeah. So it's super simple. Like, honestly, we're not trying to do any particular regime. We just keep it really simple. We're not massive cooks or anything like that. And that's what I teach for my patients as well. Keep it simple. Focus on the types of foods that you're including. Don't worry so much about portions. Like, I haven't really mentioned portions because I just have as much as I feel like having that day. And that's what I recommend to clients as well. And that's hard. It's hard to sort of eat to satiety and listen to your body's signals. But even if you sort of overeat at the beginning because you're just learning this new way of eating, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. And what I'm finding is most of my clients, particularly women, are actually under-eating. So getting them to just let go of those restrictions of how much portion size, how big portions they can have, how small portions they can have, just let go of it. Eat as much as you need. Don't worry if you overeat a little bit because it all balances out in the end as long as you're choosing the right types of foods.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, again, it's going to, like anything we do that's new, if we're so used to counting or restricting or watching our portion sizes, that's going to feel very scary at first. But I think having that trust that, we will get better at it and our body will start sending us the signals. And I agree. Some days we're hungrier than other days. And how amazing that we can tap in to those signals. So I saw someone post a question. It wasn't in this group, it was another group, because there's obviously a few groups out there that focus a lot on macros and counting macros. And it's something that I don't do and I don't teach my clients to do. But I do understand that there is people do sometimes like to have something to hang their hat on. And someone made the comment that, they weren't very hungry. They weren't very hungry, and that they hadn't reached their macros. So what should they do? Should they drink a whole lot of oil? You know, and I just thought, it just misses the point, you know, like if you're not very hungry, that's okay. You don't have to eat, because tomorrow you might be, and you might eat a bit more. So yeah, sorry, that was great, Jessica. And Valerie, what about you? Your day on a plate.
Yeah. And I want to just finish what you just started saying. I think it's important for people to understand that at least, you know, I work with almost primarily type 2 diabetes and obesity reversal. It's very important for people to understand that this way of eating, so whether or not you're doing a well-formulated ketogenic diet or you're doing just a very low carbohydrate diet, you know, so, you know, different people can tolerate varying amounts of carbohydrates. I've had athletes that I've worked with that can tolerate 75, 80 grams and still be in nutritional ketosis. And then there's other ones that are not as metabolically healthy and they're down in that 20 to 30. But it's important for people to understand that this way of eating, the main purpose is to improve your metabolic health and how your metabolism works. And the beauty of our bodies is that we store fuel. And the reason that we can store fuel, we store body fat and we can store glucose as something called glycogen. The reason we do that is because we're supposed to liberate that and be able to use it throughout the day. So we don't have to meet all of our needs by what we put in our mouth. So I think it's important that we just should let people know, no, you don't have to hit, you know, a certain amount of, you know, fat per day. I actually don't give anybody any macro goals other than when I start tapering them down. I do a specific taper because I don't like taking someone from like 200 grams a day, you know, down to 50 a day, or, you know, depending on what my goal is, you know, for that person. So I do taper it down, but it's important for people to realize that we are storing fuel every time we eat a meal, 30%, 40%, 25%, it varies. And then we use that in times of fasting in between meals, or if we have a deficit in a meal. And one of the great things about eating a low carbohydrate diet is that really cravings and hunger virtually disappear. It's very unusual that we would have a nagging hunger, you know, or a craving, most people. So I love that it's so liberating when people realize that they don't have to use that food tracker. They don't have to weigh and measure. I weigh and measure nothing, you know, nothing. I have a great list that I give my clients. And if they just eat off this tremendous list of options of foods, they're fine. You have to weigh and measure nothing, because there's nothing on there that isn't going to benefit you metabolically. There's nothing on that list, you know, that would take you, you know, that would give them too many carbohydrates to, you know, kind of downregulate their ability to use their stored fuel. So what I eat, I get up very early, 4 a.m. I start out with coffee. I do some MCT oil and some heavy cream in there. And then I fast for quite a few hours. I work out about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours later, and I do strength training. And during that training, I do a supplement. Otherwise, I don't use any supplements. But during strength training, which I do 4 or 5 times a week, I do take some protein. I do 5 grams of leucine only on those strength days in that drink. And I use something called UCAN, UCAN, a scoop of that. And then I would come home and have, you know, protein and maybe a half avocado or some protein and cheese, wait a few more hours, eat some vegetables, protein, and then dinner sort of same thing as lunch. And I eat lots of beef. So some people like beef, some don't. I eat tons of beef. I do eat personally a lot of red meat, fatty seafood a few times a week. I have 2 to 4 eggs per day. So it's delicious. It's a delicious way to eat. Anyone that's watching this, that you can put that food, you know, tracker away, put the food scale away, eat when you are hungry. If you find that you're hungry shortly after a meal, you probably missed your mark on what you ate at that meal. So eat some more next time.
Love it. I love it. And so great to hear your dietitian say that. So thank you so much. It was excellent. And so Helen, sorry, darling.
Sorry. I just
please.
really quickly wanted to say one more thing, because I realized in my talk I gave portions and talked about not eating enough food. And obviously, Valerie and I are dietitians, and I think everyone on this call consults with people. So we do have a really good idea of how much we should be eating, even though it's very intuitive to us now. So I think it's just important to say, if people out there don't feel like they have that grasp on how much they should be eating, then that's why it is so important to work with someone, because you can achieve exactly what Valerie and I have been saying. You can achieve, just eating from a food list and not worrying about portions. But if you're struggling with that, being guided by someone to help you do that can be important. So I just wanted to say that, because I feel like some people might be thinking, I'm not reaching my goals and that's what I'm doing, and I still don't really know how much I should be eating. So I think being guided by someone is useful, and then you wouldn't have to count macros because you've got that professional who might be sort of doing it for you.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely. And there's no, there's no right or wrong. There's no judgment. All we're saying is this is the potential. That's what I love about this, is just the potential, and how you are doing it now is how you see to do it. And that's absolutely fine. And if that's working for you, great. But if it isn't, and you'd like to sort of try something new, there are other ways. And I think that's just the message, and yeah, fantastic. Awesome. So can we move on to you, Helen? So the question that I was asked for you was that I have an unsupportive partner. Do you have any tips on how to get him on board?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience, whether it's with partners or with other family members. I think the first thing I would want to know, or would encourage the questioner to think about, is what does on board mean? And what does support mean to them? So if you're saying, I want my partner to get on board, does that mean, well, I'm eating 20 grams of carbs a day and I want them to be doing the same thing? Or does it mean I just want them to support the decisions that I'm making and back me up and respect my decisions? So I think the first thing is to really, really think that through, and to think about what support means to you. The next step would be maybe to have a discussion with your partner about what you're looking for from them. So it's a great opportunity as well to talk through their concerns, because I think one thing, it's easy to forget when you've been kind of immersed in the low carb world for a long time, is that there's still an element of controversy about it. It is essentially going against most Western countries' dietary recommendations, and lots of very experienced and very well credentialed people will tell you that it's not a safe thing to do. And so if you it may well be that friends or family members that are raising concerns have heard some of those messages and are actually concerned that you might be doing something that's not safe or that might harm you. So having opportunities to talk through those sorts of concerns and share some of the information and information sources that you have can be a really, really beneficial thing. The flip side of that, though, is if you're feeling that your partner is unsupportive, it may be because that they're simply not doing what you're doing, and that can be one of the real challenges, I think, when you learn new information and you make positive changes for yourself and you see the benefits of them. Wanting to share them with other people is naturally the next step, and I think it's really important in that to make sure that you're working at the pace that your partner or other family members want to go at. So rather than imposing what you're trying to do on them, actually respecting their point of view and being willing to move at their pace, which might be frustrating but can often reap better rewards. So if you're trying to encourage a partner to go low carb, sort of maybe focusing on some of the easier things, like removing some of the obvious sugar from your home, or trying to focus on home prepared meals and reducing your reliance on processed food, things like that. The health benefits from just those small steps shouldn't be underestimated. So if you're able to get a partner to move away from highly processed food, or to stop drinking sugary drinks and things like that, that can be really, really beneficial. But I think sometimes just starting with a straightforward conversation where you're clear with your partner about what sort of support you're looking for from them, and then asking them for it, asking them to back you up and being clear about what you want can be a really, really helpful way forward.
Excellent. That was so well answered. Thank you, Helen. Fantastic. Amber, the question that was asked for you was, well, I love your journey to where you are today. Do you see yourself staying strict carnivore for years to come?
That's always, I get that question a lot. And it's one of those where at the moment, because I feel fabulous and there's no reason why I would change to eating differently, it's hard to say what I may do in the future. But as of now, I have no plans to do that. I am open to evolving and changing as I evolve and change. And right now I'm going through something, the big M word, I'm kind of hitting that stage and it's throwing some stuff completely off, or at least I know it's off because I now am able to listen to my body. The signals are coming out loud and clear, even though it may be something minor comparatively. I'm already noticing it. So I'm working with a doctor right now. Matter of fact, he's the partner of one of our presenters, Michelle. And so he's going to help me through some of this and get me on some supplements and stuff like that. And right now he's having me stay doing what I'm doing, and which I'm glad, because he was asking me, why am I carnivore? Why? And originally I had started just because I wanted to try it and see if maybe I could get off my last bit of blood pressure medication, if I could clear up the rest of my rosacea, and just to see, because I advocate for this way of life and I wanted the whole spectrum from low carb all the way to carnivore. And after the first couple of days, I realized how incredible my digestion became. And I thought it was so good on keto. I had no clue that I had just accepted it as being the new normal. So once I ditched the fiber, which I'm pretty sure that's been the issue for me, I feel so much better. I can't even tell you. I mean, when you get rid of the bloat, the gas, the constipation, the pain you've had since you were like 3 years old, it's this wonderful thing. And plus you just feel good all over. So
people are happier to be around you.
Yeah, because I'm considerably happier, and so I can't really see anything. Like I was thinking the other day, okay, let's say I decided I'm gonna kind of be more keto. What the heck would I add back in? I don't know, because fruits and vegetables, no, just it can't happen because of the fiber. I don't want to feel bad again. So what else am I going to add? Nuts and seeds? No, because that has fiber too. So exactly what would I add back in? Because I could technically have dairy, although I have recently realized that dairy is a trigger for me and I had to get rid of it. It's been 3 days now. I got rid of my coffee because it was a little bit of coffee with my cream. Okay, it wasn't about the coffee, it was about the cream. I didn't care about the coffee really, apparently, because when I tried to do without, that coffee was nasty. So I was able to get rid of the coffee and along with it, the heavy cream, which was my issue. And so I don't really know what I could possibly add back in to change. Now, if something happened to where my body just really needed something outside of what's considered carnivore, I'm open to doing that so long as it doesn't hurt me, like, the fibers do. Maybe some vegetables I could add back in and try, and maybe it wouldn't hurt my body as much. Maybe some of the lower fiber type of things if I needed that. But I don't desire it. I don't feel like I need it right now. So for the time being, I just don't really know how I would do it differently now. It's kind of one of those things. I'm open to it. I'm absolutely open to it. And, with what I'm going through, I'll never say never. But right now, I'm good.
And just to say, so you're working with Dr. J. Wrigley with your menopause symptoms and stuff? Yes. So if anyone is looking for someone, I know is he in Canada as well?
Well, right now he's in the Dominican Republic because we're having all kinds of trouble trying to connect.
Okay.
I don't know the whole story with that, but yes, I believe originally, yes. I think it's just a temporary thing. I won't swear by it, but it's hard to get.
But he's on social. Yes, he's on social media. I've been following him for quite some time. So Fantastic. Thank you, Amber. And Jessica, can we overeat protein?
Yeah, I mean, we can overeat anything really, but I think it depends how long are you talking. Like if you, like what I was saying before, if you have one meal or a couple of meals and you overeat protein, it's not the end of the world. But if you're consistently overeating protein every single day, like you're setting yourself this limit, which is beyond your own satiety and beyond what your body signals are telling you, to eat protein. And it also depends what else you're having with it. Like, is it how much protein relative to fat, relative to carb? And what is the micronutrients in that protein? Are you varying the proteins, what type of protein it is? Like, it really, there's no black or white with that answer. You certainly can overeat anything if you do it for long enough. But I think the question really should be flipped in these, with this type of question, it should be flipped around to, if I'm overeating one particular food, what am I displacing? What am I missing because I'm overeating that one type of food? Like I know, for example, a lot of my clients, they're really focused on chicken, like it's a healthy meat for a lot of people. So they're eating lots of chicken, they're eating it every night. And it's not the amount of chicken, it's the fact that it's then displacing some red meat or some fish or some other types of proteins with different types of nutrients. So, I mean, I'm usually giving people a minimum target for protein. Like if they really need guidance with portions, it's usually a minimum. I rarely give maximums because if you're eating it with the right types of foods as well, it's very, very hard to really overdo it for too long. So yeah. I hope that answers that question.
And I think the difference too is when you're talking about real food, we've had this discussion before, there's probably a difference between real food and more, processed food for, or, protein that we drink, for example, or something like that. I think when it's real actual food, all those things we were talking about in the start, are going to kick in. And, really, it'd be very difficult to actually access just pure protein anyway. I mean, when you're eating animal protein, you're eating generally, unless you're buying the leanest meat, there's just fat in there as well. So, it's an interesting question, but it came up in the first one and it's come back again. So obviously it's, just an area maybe people just get a bit confused on. And of course, then we're talking to the difference between animal and plant protein, as we know, is quite different as well. And
yeah, well, I also look at when people are worried if they're overeating protein, because I get this question every day as well. I usually look at, I do look at how much they're having and then when they're having it. So if they're having just 1 or 2 meals and they're overdoing it at both of those meals, your body can only absorb a certain amount at once. So you might be not necessarily overdoing it across the day, but overdoing it at a particular meal. And it might be better if you split it up into an extra meal, for example. So instead of having like a huge amount at dinner, you could split that and actually have a bit at lunch and then a bit at dinner, and you could get more out of your protein, so you could absorb more of the protein, more of the amino acids. So that's one thing to try. And again, it's just like keeping things interesting, keeping your body guessing. And I think as we said before, it's hard for individuals to do this on their own, like to know when, am I eating enough? How much am I having? Am I, when should I have it? But I think working with someone who could just help you change things around every now and then and use different tools and just keep your body sort of guessing, but at the same time making sure you are meeting your nutrient needs. I think that's the most important thing.
Yep.
And I would add that, this is probably coming from someone that's interested in either starting low carb or they're already doing low carb since they were watching, right, your summit, that if you have healthy functioning kidneys, it's not really an issue. Your body can deal with processing, excreting. And like I said, the low carbohydrate typically will take care of portions in itself. I don't have any clients ever tell me like, oh my God, I'm really craving a lot of pork chops, or, I really can't stop eating steak. Like your body will deal with it. So I always like to kind of tell my clients, like, that's not even something for you to worry about. Your kidneys are fine. This is fine. Depending on who you're talking to, that let's not You want to eat a big steak, eat a big steak. I mean, the body will take care of it itself. They're not going to do that. You know, like Jessica said, you are not going to eat a pound of steak every single night for too many nights. It's just not going to be that enjoyable.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the confusion comes in too, you know, with the low, when generally people learn about what LCHF means, you know, there is this moderate protein, you know, and people get confused. Well, what is moderate protein? And that's why I suppose there's a fear. And certainly in the 7 years I've been involved in this space, I have come to understand not to fear protein, but certainly in the beginning, I thought I had to have some moderate protein intake so I didn't increase my insulin and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, we started out that way. We started out saying that. And then we've gone away from that now we know that in a low carbohydrate diet, in that environment, you're not really going to throw yourself out of ketosis. I mean, I've experimented on myself more than anybody with protein. So we did initially think that protein really had to be, you know, we had to keep a handle. And I think really it was Volek and Finney studies. But even for the Virta patients, that they just were not seeing that in the patients that were on low carbohydrate.
Even with, sorry to interrupt, Valerie, but even with Volek and Finney, they say moderate protein, but it's actually what most people would consider high protein.
Definitely. So, we would as dietitians for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So people's wording, like what does moderate even mean? I think the most important thing for saying moderate, I think this is how it started, is just to avoid high protein, low carb, low fat diets. Because high protein, low carb, low fat is dangerous. So I think that's where the moderate protein kind of comes in as well and can be useful. But then you're right, people are like sort of restricting their protein, like, oh my gosh, I got to have moderate protein. But you don't need to do that at all.
No, as long as you're a member who's carnivore. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yeah. And as we heard from so many of the presenters in the summit anyway, overall, women particularly undereat protein. So I really don't think that as a group, you know, obviously this is a group thing. There are individual variations, but I think overall we probably need to work at actually eating more anyway. But all right. So Valerie, the next question was for you. What first led you down the path to low carb, and have you always advocated low carb as a dietitian?
No, absolutely not. I went to school in the United States. So I'm supposed to tell my clients to eat bread and rice and oats and lots of fruit. Did you guys know that we in America, I don't know what you do there, but we say fruits and vegetables as if they are the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing. They are not the same thing. So no, I started out being an amazing dietitian, practicing, you know, standard, practice guidelines in the United States. And then I realized over the years that my clients really weren't getting all that much better. At the same time as I was sort of doing this self-reflection, like maybe I don't like being even a dietitian, like we're not that effective. I was also racing in triathlon, and it's really in cycling, you know, biking and triathlon that there was a big movement in low carbohydrate because they did something that was called fat adapting so that they didn't have to fuel a lot during racing. So I was in the beginning of that and in that area. So with those athletes and being one of those athletes, and we started experimenting with low carb for performance and seeing great outcomes. And then I started using it with some of my clients, and it all sort of came together. So I got exposed to Tim Noakes, and I was seeing Jason Fung. Like it was all bubbling up at kind of the same time, and light bulbs went off. And I primarily only practice low carbohydrate and keto now. I have a very hard time if someone doesn't want to move in that direction, even if they are healthy. Because like I'm healthy, and you know, and I believe in eating that way for myself. So no, I definitely didn't start out low carb. We don't learn to do low carb. We still don't talk about it much in America. I talk to new dietitians all the time, and what I hear them say scares me, but hopefully all of us, you know, can change that. I do practice in some doctors' offices here. I still see it in their notes where they're recommending, like they're sending their patient to me, but they're writing in there low carb, low fat, low cholesterol. So they're just so used to saying that. Right. So what do you eat if you're doing low carb, low fat, low cholesterol, but they're still recommending that, but they are sending patients to me. So they know it works. They just still can't even wrap their heads on what exactly is working. So you can always do it. I do it now. I believe in it. Anyone that has questions, you guys can message me. I'm on Facebook. I'll be glad to answer.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Valerie. So Helen, I hope we're trying to keep it to half an hour. It's never possible because you're all so wonderful with so much great stuff to say. Have you all got another 5 minutes to hang around?
Oh,
Yeah. Awesome. So I've got a couple more questions. So Helen, I loved your talk. Why is change so hard? Some days I do so well and some days I just don't. Not that there's a real question in there, but that was what was said to me.
Yeah. So, change is hard. Or can be hard, and it's important to acknowledge that. I think in terms of good and bad days, I mean, first of all, why does it matter? I mean, we're all eating low carb. I'm sure we all have bad days, but bad days once you're established in a new routine probably doesn't matter because it's easy enough to get back on the wagon again. I think it can be really, really hard though if you're just starting out. And in particular, if you think about the changes that you're looking, but aside from behavior changes, the changes that you actually want to take place in your body, if you're managing to do a few good days where you're keeping your carbs really low and you're sticking to your plan, and then you have a bad day, it's a little bit like snakes and ladders. It's like landing on a snake. A bad day can kind of send you back to the beginning again. If you were starting to get into ketosis, it can knock you right out of ketosis, and then you're back trying to climb that ladder again. And then in a few days' time, if you have another bad day, it's going to send you back to the beginning. So it can be really, really difficult to make progress. So in starting to unpick that, I think one way of moving forward is to say, well, what does a good day look like? When a day goes well, and when things go as planned, why do they go well? What are the things that you do? What were maybe the things that you eat, or the behaviors that you followed, or the way that your day panned out, or the planning that went into your day? Or was it a day you were at work? Was it a day you were at home? Was it a day you were socializing? What were all the little steps that fell into place that made that a good day? So then you start to get a picture. If you do that over a number of good days, you start to get a picture of, well, what actually works for you? How can you join things together to create good days? And similarly, if you go back and analyze a bad day, what was it about that day that went badly? Was it maybe you were at work and you were a meeting and they put plates of sandwiches down in front of you and you simply couldn't resist, and you ate loads more carbs than you planned to? Was it that you hadn't made a plan that day for what you were going to have for dinner, and you arrived home late and you didn't have food in the fridge, and you ended up having to make something quick and easy because the family was starving and everyone was on your back, and you didn't eat what you want to? Was it that you had a particularly stressful day? Was it that you had a boring day? I mean, I don't know what you guys have been like during lockdown, but boring days are really, really hard when you're at home. So working out what are the triggers that are going to turn a day into a bad day for you can be really, really valuable, because then you can start putting in place the behaviors that work for you on good days. So if it's about making sure that you know what you're going to be eating during the day, whilst sort of meal planning and shopping lists and things like that can seem really tedious, it actually can be a really good, effective way of building your habits, and building a succession of good days rather than allowing things to fall flat. Similarly, if maybe if it's stress that's a trigger for you, actually just identifying that and recognizing and saying to yourself, yes, I'm stressed, and then trying to not follow through with an eating behavior that follows on from that can be a really a worthwhile way of working that through. And lastly, just being aware, as I said at the beginning, of the changes that are going on in your body. So if you're just getting started on low carb, you might find that for 3 or 4 days you feel great on it, and then your glycogen stores have been depleted. Your body needs to start burning fat for fuel. And if you're not quite there yet, your body is likely to be crying out for carbs. And so if the reason that you're having bad days is because you're getting carb cravings, acknowledging that and make it, either making some changes in terms of the amount of fat that you're eating, or, reaching out for someone who can support you to make the modifications that you need to help get through that process where you're switching into nutritional ketosis, can be a really helpful way of getting you over that hump.
Yeah, sounds good. And as you said, Jess, this is another factor where having someone beside you can really, really help, particularly in those early days when, yes, as your body is becoming, it's going to go through a lot of changes. It's going to feel very different, and some of it is very confusing if you don't understand what's happening. So having someone, in your corner to help you in the early days, or, when you're, what I see a lot, and the bulk of my work is the habit change stuff. So yes, we're a bunch of habits. We're a bunch of, behaviors that have been developed over so many years, or a lifetime, really. I mean, we're not going to unravel that overnight. That's going to take time. And I think I love what you said, Helen. There's so much that we can see in all of that. But, number one thing is don't be so hard on yourself either. We're all going to have good days. We're all going to have bad days. Part of being human being. And, yeah, as you said, Helen, during isolation, I'm sure all of us experienced challenges around that. Please, don't be so hard on yourself. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up now with the final question. I did have a few questions. I'm sorry we haven't gotten to them because time is short. But what I think I might do is post them in the comments and ask the presenter who was asked the question, if they wouldn't mind just putting a few notes in when they get a chance. As I said, I'm sorry that, we've run out of time, but I just wanted to wrap it up with a question for each of you. Which is, what are your top tips in moving forward in the lifestyle? So Amber, we'll start with you.
Yes. One of my big things that I've been noticing a lot is sometimes people get very sucked into the whole dogmatic part of following a lifestyle. Like they think that there's only one right way to eat. And I think it's very important to understand that your needs may change as you go along. Your circumstances change, your hormones change, your age, your sex. There's so many things going on that you need to be male, female. Females have a lot of hormone stuff going on, and so it makes a big difference. And you have to be willing to experiment and find out what works best for your body. And just because something works great for one person doesn't mean it's going to be the best thing for you. So be willing to evolve and change as you go through. And the second thing I think is very, very important is the mental aspect of any kind of lifestyle. You really have to change your relationship with food, and you have to work on that mental side, because you can have any diet in the world, and if you haven't worked on that and you're not, giving it the attention that it deserves, any diet's going to be able to fail, even something so wonderful as the low carb diets, which do help with your hunger and your cravings, which allows you to be able to focus a little bit more in that area. But don't ever, just try to push that to the side and think that you're just a failure. Well, there's a lot of underlying issues there, the attachment to food, and you need to explore why you go to food when you're upset, or you need comfort, or it's your entertainment. Why? Find out why. There could be something that you need to deal with, and most of us do. I sure did. I'm still working on it. I mean, I still have things. So it's don't ever just blow that part off and think it's just about what you put in your mouth. It's what you put in here too.
Yeah, you absolutely love that. Thanks, Amber. Jessica?
I think a good tip would be to break the diet or your diet, whatever your dietary pattern is or the one you want to do, break it down into strategies. So, you know, especially in this online space, there's always a new thing that pops up every single day. Like you should be fasting for 18 hours, you should be doing carnivore, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. There's all these different variations of the low carb dietary pattern. And I think so many people haven't even got the basics right. You know, how much protein, how much fat, how much carb, what types of food should I be eating? And I think if you break it all down into individual strategies, so maybe like focusing on having more red meat, for example, if you're someone that doesn't eat red meat and you need more B12 or you need more iron or whatever it is. And then another strategy could be, you know, focusing on cutting out sugar or focusing on doing a fast once a week or whatever it is, like really simple strategies, write them down and then prioritize them. So for myself, my number one priority, which actually has nothing to do really with low carb, is actually being gluten-free. So when I go on holidays or when I'm at a friend's house and I can't really stick to the dietary pattern I really want to stick with, like my ultimate dietary pattern, it doesn't matter, because as long as I just tick off my number one priority, which is staying gluten-free, I'm happy, I don't feel guilty, and I'm still going forward, even though I'm not quite at my optimal dietary pattern. And I think that's really important for people to do themselves. Like, what is my number one dietary priority I want to stick with? And that might change over time. But, you know, for someone with diabetes, it might be keeping their carbs low. That's the most important thing. And so they might allow for low carb treats and low carb goodies and things like that. Whereas for someone else with gut issues, the most important thing for them might be all sweeteners and all fibers and things like that. And for them, that's their number one issue. So then if they were to have some carbs through honey or something like that, it wouldn't be such a big deal. So I think that it's important to introduce flexibility into your own diet by prioritizing what parts of the diet are the most important to you.
Yeah, I love that. But see how individual this is, you know, because what you do is going to be different to what I do. You know, that's the beauty of this. And that's why, you know, there's no room for dogma. There's no room to be dogmatic, because that just misses the point, I think. So, yeah, I love that, Jess. Thank you. Valerie, your top tips.
Yeah, I want to start with, it's not a tip. It's just a mindset. I want people to realize that your health struggles around nutrition are just not your fault. Nutrition science, nutrition is overwhelming. It is confusing, even for myself, who's a nutrition professional and study it. It's my life. It's overwhelming and it's confusing. So I want people just to accept that and not blame themselves for failing, you know, when they've tried a diet or they've gone on a plan and it hasn't worked well. You have followed your doctor's advice, you know, and it hasn't worked out. It's not your fault. It is your responsibility though. So find someone that is speaking your language to you, that where it makes sense and you feel like you can connect and you feel like you can trust them. So find someone that can help you on that journey, because it's challenging, but the benefits, the power, if you can unleash the power of nutrition, you will transform not only your health, but your lifespan, your health span, longevity. So much is impacted, is affected by the power of nutrition. And it's in everyone's toolbox to be able to change, their health, their longevity, their, lifespan. So just find someone that you can work with if you're overwhelmed by it, and just know that you can do it. So
love it.
I don't want to give it.
I love it.
I just want to empower people to know that it's so powerful. Nutrition is powerful, more powerful than any, than most medications, and they can be successful. Do not give up.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thanks, Valerie. And Helen, and hopefully her dog.
Yeah, contributions from my dog. I hope you've enjoyed them. Tips from me. I mean, first of all, I just want to say actually, I agree with everything the other speakers have said, but just to echo what Amber was saying about, life transitions and, I've been doing low carb 7 or 8 years now. I'm now 52. So, my body is changing, and actually having the flexibility to sort of tweak things and tinker with things as you go, because certainly, you know, what worked for me when I was 45 doesn't necessarily work for me now, and you have to make adaptations, and that's really, really important. And in doing so, find new sources of information too. I mean, I think we've all got our you know, favorite gurus and our go-to textbooks or whatever, and I think this is one of the opportunities in these sorts of events, is that it introduces you to new people and new ideas, and, you know, and some of the thinking and some of the science is evolving, and, you know, we're learning as we go. So it's great, sort of, as you're getting more confident with low carb, if you can sort of reach out to other sources of information. And the last thing I'd say is just about trying to maintain some sort of balance. I mean, there's many aspects to a low carb lifestyle. I mean, obviously the food is an important one. Exercise is in there, gut health is in there, sleep and stress management are in there. And it's really about working out a combination, and as Jessica said, prioritizing those things to come up with a solution, like a prescription for yourself. Going really, really hard on just one of those things is probably not going to work, and it might actually do you harm in the long term. So, you know, if you're flogging yourself with exercise, but all of the other things are out of balance, long term, that's not going to work. And similarly, if you are, you know, really, really, really pushing the low carb, but ignoring all of the other aspects of the lifestyle, then long term you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. So it's really about maintaining that balance, I think.
Fabulous and fantastic. I can't thank you enough on behalf of everybody for your involvement, not just in the summit, because, you know, most people, you know, you've done that just because of your love and your passion and your work, and also making the time to come here today to answer people's questions. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and such an honor to know you all. And yeah, on behalf of everyone, thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye.